Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another virtual professional development opportunity offered by the Maine Department of Education. For those of you that haven't met me, my name is Jason Anderson, and I'm the Visual and Performing Arts Content Specialist at the Maine Department of Education. We've offered several of these sessions ever since last March. We had a meeting at the department this morning where the commissioner mentioned that we are in month 10 of doing this. And I'm not sure, in fact, I'm pretty certain I know how all of you feel, because I'm sure I've heard from you by email or in other forms or ways. And I understand what kind of a challenge it has been, and the department understands what the challenges have been for you. And we are continuing to work diligently to support you and make sure that you have what you feel you need to be successful and for your students to be successful. So that brings us to offering some series of professional learning opportunities. And this series is going to focus on leveraging the GSuite tools, as in Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Sheets, Google Classroom, et cetera, to hopefully make your job in instruction and assessment a bit easier. That is our goal. And I'm so thrilled for us to be partnering with our fantastic Google educator trained colleague, Judy Maholick. Judy teaches music in the Bangor Public Schools, and she has a fantastic presentation set up. And we're just gonna start today. This was originally designed to be a 3-part series, but I think we're gonna play it out and see how it goes and see what the needs of the field are. Judy has graciously volunteered to craft these sessions in a way that is going to be maximal impact for all of you in a positive way. So just a few housekeeping things before we start. If you could keep your mic muted unless you want to chime in with something, I'm sure we'll have some opportunity to stop and offer some feedback and have some conversation. We typically try to save that for the end because I know Judy has a lot of things that she wants to show you today. And if you have any questions along the way that you'd like to drop in the chat box, you are invited to do that. And if you're not a frequent Zoom user, in the bottom toolbar of your screen in your Zoom window, you'll find a chat button. If you press that chat button, it'll give you an opportunity to input a question there. So I'll be watching the chat for you, Judy, as we're going along. So if there seems to be some thematic questions that are coming down the line, or we get to a stopping place and you want to know about some questions, I'm happy to bring those up. So that'll hopefully keep everything flowing. I do have an exit ticket for you at the end of this session, which will lead you to a link for a professional development certificate for 1 contact hour. So we're pleased to offer you that. And then we may have a little bit of creative scheduling that we need to do for our next session. Judy's had a scheduling conflict for next week. So, but we can talk about that a little bit at the end. So enough from me. I'm going to turn it over to Judy. Take it over, Judy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Judy Maholick. I am a middle school and general and choral music teacher here in Bangor. It's been quite an interesting year. I am Google certified, as Jason said, and I also have my degree in instructional technology, my master's. So using technology is something that I kind of naturally do in my classroom. I've done it for years. It intrigues me how you can have students that don't say anything in class, but when you put them in with technology, they all of a sudden feel free to express themselves. And that kind of intrigued me. And I did a lot of thinking about that and realized that's where I wanted my master's to be, to figure out how to best leverage the tools that I had to bring out those more quiet and shy learners. And it was funny because this morning, my very first class, they all met, and in the classroom, they literally are the class I can walk in, even if I'm 30 seconds, if I've gone to the bathroom, I come back in, they all have their laptops out. They're try to talk to them. They say nothing at all. They I am pulling things out of them. Come on, guys, raise your hand. They're the class online I can't get to shut up. They never stop talking. And then I'm like, okay, guys, end of class. I'm gonna stay on for a few minutes if you have questions. And they all stay on and they chat for the next 20 minutes. It's crazy. So I think technology can be both a blessing and a curse. Remote learning can be both a blessing and a curse. It depends on how you approach it. So what I'd like to do today is, I was going to have everyone introduce themselves, but we have a lot of people here. So if you have not done so in the chat already, if you could just put your name and what you are teaching this year, subject and, content area. And then I was also looking for things that went well and things that you've had a challenge. So as we're going through this, Jason's going to keep an eye on the chat. Just drop in questions that you have, and I'll get to stopping points in the presentation. And at those stopping points, Jason, if you could sort of help me out sorting through it, I will then take some questions, and feel free to, even if I haven't covered something and something's like dying on your mind, you want to get it off your chest and you want to ask questions, put that in the chat as well. Because what I'll do is I'll go back and I will look at the chat afterwards. I'll download it, and if I haven't answered your question, I'll try to get back to you. Okay, so everyone has a different setup with how they teach, with their course load, with their subject matter. I'm going to show you a lot of things that work for me personally. That may not be the best setup for you. So what I would like to do is, as we're going, when you have questions, again, write them down, and let's see if we can brainstorm some solutions for you, okay? So here is my big thing. I have 3 learning pathways. Well, sometimes I guess you could consider 4 this year to deal with, sometimes at the same time. I have students that are face-to-face 5 days a week. I have students that are hybrid, Tuesday, Thursday, students that are hybrid Monday, Wednesday. Sometimes those kids come on Fridays, depending on which week it is. And then I have a full group of kids that are remote. Some come in regular ed classes that are just 5 days a week, and they pop in on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Some kids, I have like a whole remote that comes 1 day a week. And then like the next day is like an office hour. They can come if they want, and then they come back the next day. So as you can see, it's crazy. So how do you best manage that? Well, I got thinking at the beginning of the year, the best way I could do that was to set up some consistency for me. And so I came up with a system where I would post all the work at the beginning of the week. That may not work for all of you, but if I post all the work at the beginning of the week, then those kids that are popping in on different days can, access the work at any time. They all know that they may be working ahead on something that I haven't covered yet. And if they're not understanding it, they need to wait for the lesson in class, or they need to wait for me to post the lesson. So that way they can sort of self-work on those days that, self-pace, on those days that, like those weeks that they come, like we don't have any class on Monday and they come on Tuesday, the work's there. Sometimes they can go back and watch videos. So let me show you, I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to show you how I set myself up to give you some ideas. And then I'd really like to talk with you. What do you think is going to work for you? So I'm going to share my screen, and I've got a mock classroom set up with fake students in it, just for confidentiality issues. So I'm going to go to the front page of this. This is what you see when you have a Google Classroom. And I assume you all are working in Google Classroom. So as you know, when you get to Google Classroom, it looks like this. You have a stream, which is your information. And I have right now our agenda for what we're working on in the stream. So welcome and introductions, kind of want to know what your content focus were, and you put all that in the chat. Grade levels that you're doing, and again, you put that in the chat. And then again, something that's been challenging, something that's gone well. And then I'm going to do a 15-minute overview of Google Slides, because that's how I present my work to my students. It's what works for me. It may not be what works for you. I'm going to show you how to add audio and video to it, because that's pretty cool, and some of the interactive features that it has. And then we're going to go into a little bit about how Google Classroom works and how to set up a rubric in Google Classroom. If you don't know this trick of the trade, it is something that has saved me hours and hours of correcting time. So I'm going to go over that, and then we're going to do a little bit of wrap up. I'm also looking in the future to go over Google Forms. I'm going to touch on that today, but that's going to be, I think, the next session that we're going to do is how to create forms that are interactive, how to create forms that work for you. It's not just a form that you do for like a quiz. Although I have to tell you, vocab quizzes, self-grading vocab quizzes are the best thing ever, because it just will do it. There are certain things that you can use for it, but I use it for exit tickets. I use it for interactive activities. I use it to collect data from students. So Google Forms is really cool, but that will be next session. And then the session after that, it depends on how these 2 sessions go, what you all need. So I'm just going to jump in and show you what works for me, and then going to go about 10 or 15 minutes and take a little bit of a break and have you ask some questions. So when I open up my Google Classroom, I just want to point a couple things out to you. How many of you have ever had like the stream that you see right here, and you have your kids like posting nonsense and silliness into the stream? That happened to me all the time. Okay. So this year it's cool because Google, you can make suggestions to Google and they listen to you. You know, this little question mark down here, if you click on it and you have an issue, you can see what's new, if you have issues, what those are, but you can also request a feature. And I requested this feature. I don't know if this was because of me, but I'm sure there were several of us out there requesting this feature to shut the stream off. So if you go into your settings, this is where you set up your classes. I think you probably have all been here. And then with the stream, right now I've got it that students can post and comment. Did you know that you can shut it off so students can only comment? So they can only respond to you, or only teachers can comment? That's the one I choose unless I have a class that I know is responsible with their interactions. I teach middle school. That's a rare thing. So I usually shut that right off unless I need it. Then you can show in the stream the classwork, but you know something, I actually hide my classwork in the stream. I make them go over to the classwork section because things get lost, I found, in that stream. And they're like, I didn't see that. And they're relying solely on that stream. So I shut that right off. You can show the deleted items if you want to. I don't. And then you can have guardian summaries. So this is what goes home to parents. You can generate the Meet link. I have not done so for this classroom, but I think you probably have all done that. And it shows up in the top of the Google Classroom, the start page. You can have it calculate your grades. I don't do that because I find kids rely on this. And as we know, sometimes what you do here doesn't always reflect with what goes in the grade book and what goes online. If it does for you and that works, that's great. I personally don't, but that again is an option. I just want to show you all the options. And this is where you set up your categories and everything for your grading. So you can have your grade book set up exactly here as it does with whatever you use online, or you can hide the grades here. So it's totally up to you, totally an option. So once I've set that up, I'm going to show you, I'm going to discard the changes that I just made. I go over to my classwork. And then in my classwork, I have it set up by week. So I've got my week 1 right here and my week 2 right here. And then I have a general information section, which has, like, this is the agenda for today. My digital sign out sheet, kids are not taking bathroom passes out of our classroom when we're face to face. They sign out digitally. So that's a Google form, and I'll show you that next time. And then just for when we're done, usually I post like fun websites and things they can go to. Okay, I'm going to stop right there at that point, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I think I'm going to just take questions at this point of Google Class setup, if anyone has any. So I'm going to go back to the
one question, Judy, that's come across so far,
okay.
Has been, which I know is something that you're gonna tackle. As soon as I read the question, I knew that it was going to come up anyway. Is easily and efficiently placing classroom events in student calendars. And so I know that when I was teaching, I had my kids use their Google Calendar exclusively because that's where I put rehearsals and I put stuff for class and I put everything on there. And I know that you can have that that happen seamlessly in the classroom. So I know that you're probably going to get to that.
Yes, and if you look, I think it's on this one. There is a place, of course, I'm not seeing it right now, where you have your Google Classroom, your Google Calendar. But all your assignments will show up on the Google Calendar. I may not have the setting on this. I have it on my other classes. I can show you one of those, where all of my kids' assignments automatically go onto a Google Calendar, and it's viewable to them. So yeah, why am I not seeing that right now? But if I go into my calendar over here, all of my assignments are viewable to them. I'll get to that in just a minute. Let me keep going with what I'm doing. And yeah, again, brain cramp. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just something with the grading. I had a question because I want to know if there was a simple way. I found the problem I had with using the grading is that when I come to a new trimester or semester, that it looked like I had to input all the kids in again. Is there a way
So
that I don't have to?
do you see your kids like every, like you're talking about like every quarter, or like, do you have a new batch of kids? Like,
No, well, my kids I see the whole year, but
Yeah.
I noticed that, for a grade, setting up a grade book, I wanted it to look fresh, my grading for the
Yeah.
next semester. Is there a simple way? I couldn't find any way, and my colleagues couldn't, that use it didn't know either.
Yeah, and I don't think that there is, unless you hide those previous assignments.
Okay.
Someone else might be able to talk to this. I'll be honest, I have kids for a quarter and I switch and I get brand new kids. So
Mm.
I've never run into that because it's always fresh. It's every 9 weeks, new batch for me. So
Yes.
if someone else knows that, feel free to chime in, because that's, again, something that I can research that for you. But I don't know off the top of my head because I don't use it that way.
Sure. Thank
So,
you.
Pat,
Judy, one quick thing I noticed too. I love using my MacBook, but
Yeah.
it looks so different. Well, not so, but it's different than the iPad.
it is. And again, that's one thing we use MacBooks and Chromebooks. And
Yep.
so iPad is one of those things that it does look very different. And I don't have a lot of experience with that. So that's one thing I can look. I do have an iPad and I can try that for the next time and see if I can sort of talk you through some of those shortcuts. So let me just write that one down. So are your kids using exclusively iPads?
Yes, and I
Okay.
got both.
And you have
I'm
both.
using my MacBook better, but looking at the two, it's just a little different.
Yep, I will definitely look into that and I'll give you some pointers on that, because I know it's very different. So that is frustrating. All right. So let's go back. I'm going to share my screen with you again. And take you to here. I'm going to show you how I got here. This is one of the things that I really love, and I've just started working with this more, is if you go back and you go to the upcoming and the view all, you can see what you have coming up for your students. And if they had done work and it had turned it in, again, I've got 2 fake students in the class, so they've done no work. Oh my goodness. But anyway, you can look and you can review all of the work that they have done so far. So instead of going over to that grade book and trying to go like by assignment and see who's turned in and who hasn't, this will take you quickly there. I don't know if you've discovered that. And you can mark them all as reviewed. So you've corrected this whole assignment, or you can leave it for later. So that's how I quickly can see when kids have turned work in, which is something that I know a lot of people, I know I was struggling with that. Just seeing, how do I know when people have turned things in when you get late work in? Because I know we all have it trickling in right now. So that's a really cool feature if you have not done that. It's a really neat thing to use. All right. So we'll go back to my class. And let's go to the classwork for the week 1. So you all, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but I guess I'm just going to go over quickly. This is the stream, which most people are in. This is your classwork where you create new classes. This is where the Google Calendar is. So this is where, if you click here, it will show up where all of your assignments are. And this is going to show you all of my calendars that are currently going on. I think even like the ones that I have with assignments, but let's get, like, for example, this was our Monday, Wednesday group came. This purple is, I have an assignment due for one of my classes called This Is Us. My week 9 listening journals are due on Friday. So this will show you where all of your assignments will show up when they're all due. And you can see all of everything is showing up there that's due for my students. That will also show up for your students as well, if they're using the Google Calendar. All right, if that makes sense. And then you also here have your Google Drive folder, which is where all of your work will go for this class. Really, Google Classroom is basically just assignments that are put in folders. And then this is the interface that you can see where those are. So these are the templates for the assignments. these are the different topics that I've made, the folders for them. And then when you make work for kids, when you assign them work, it will be in these folders. So here's my student real fake, and this is his week 1 classwork. Okay. So I do, as I said, I do things by topics, by week. It's what works for me. Some people do it by topics, like when you do a unit on something, you would do the topic as the unit. So to create a new topic, you go to create and topic, and then you can call it whatever you want. I know for my son, who's in middle school, he's got an ELA teacher that does everything by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then under Monday, she does the date. And then she brings Monday up to the top when they're on Monday. She brings Tuesday up to the top when they're on Tuesday. So it all depends on that's what works for them. But you'd make your new topic, week 3, and then the dates, and then you can add it. And it goes to the top of your list. So now when you create a new assignment, that's going to show up here. And then you're going to go to the topic that you choose, the points that you have. You can choose all of your classes. So if you make one assignment, you can choose more than one class, and you can add that all in right there. The number of points, or you don't have to give them points if you don't want to. Okay.
And Judy, I think you may have just touched on this, but I just want to go back. Where it says all students, you can actually select which students you want to receive this lesson. So I know that many of you have experiences where you may not have all of your students present, or maybe you're doing this as an assessment and you want to give an alternate assessment to students that aren't present that day. You can click on that down menu, and then you can select which students you want to receive the assignment, but the default is all students.
Right. And sometimes when I give the students the option to retake an assessment, I'll show you this when I show you forms, but if it's like a vocab quiz, you can mix up the question order and you can mix up the answer order. So you can give the exact same quiz in forms, and then you can just assign it to those students that need to do the retake. So that works out very well by being able just to choose the students that you want. So if I chose, this class, and then I chose another class to go with it, and I don't want to do it because of confidentiality, I can actually select the students that I want from both classes to retake it and assign it to all of the students that need to retake. Like, for example, I have 5 kids in my first period class and 3 kids in my second. I assign it to both classes, but then I just self-select those students. Okay. And I know some of this stuff seems like it's basic, but I want to make sure that everyone understands some of the things that it can do. I hope this isn't too basic for anyone. If it is, if you want some of the meat, just let me know, because there's all kinds of things that you can do with this. So you can create quiz assignments, and those are the self-grading assignments that we're going to talk about when we talk about forms. You can create a question, which I love this feature. Sometimes I'll pose a question for deeper thinking for my students, and they can respond to the question, then they can respond to each other. Again, it takes a certain level of maturity. You can grade that question as well. So that's kind of fun. Like, I think I posted up one that said, what makes good music good? And they had to respond using, we'd learned about melody, harmony, rhythm, texture, form, dynamics, all of the musical elements. And they had to respond saying, music has a good beat. Well, what makes the beat good? Well, it's the tempo. I like it when it's fast. And so they had to get into sort of the meat of vocab. That was kind of fun. Material is one that I use all the time. If I do a video that's me teaching a lesson for the students that may not be in class that day, then I will put the video up on YouTube, and then I'll just post the video here under material, so students know to go there. And then reuse post all the time. I will do a post maybe because I teach the same curriculum basically 4 times. I'll do a post first quarter, and then I'll go back and I can grab it and reuse it and then just change it for that quarter. Okay, so that's Google Classroom in a nutshell. I'm going to touch on rubrics in just a minute, but I'm going to stop right there again and see if I have questions.
I think I'm hitting some of the questions, Judy, that are sort of where you and I are tag teaming here to get a lot of things covered in a short period of time. Yep. Linda had a question about changing the grading, and I know that you don't use the grading feature much, but Is there a way to change the grading to a standards-based system? Can you set up the grading
Yes.
in there? Could you maybe touch on that really quick?
I believe there is. Hold on just a second. Let me get to that point.
Sure. And some of you that are dropping questions in the chat, I hope you'll notice I'm putting some links in there for you to check out. For example, there's a great Google Chrome extension that will link Google Classroom with several different student information systems. So if you want to use the grading feature and you want to export your grades from Google Classroom to your student information system, there are some extension plugins to help with that.
So just looking at your question, right now it seems like it's only like a topic-based grading system. You can weight categories by grading or by points. So it doesn't look like they have systems, but standards-based grading at this point. But I know when I do the rubric, I do my rubrics a lot of times standard-based, and I sort of draw the points on that, if that makes sense. So again, I don't delve into this part of the grade book that much, and maybe someone else can chime in. If you've used standards-based in your grade book, I'd love to hear how your experience has been as well. I don't know if anyone else, because that's a great question. I can research more of that.
I agree, Judy. I think that is a great question because obviously a lot of people are moving that direction or are living in that world now exclusively. But I will agree with you. I think using the rubric feature on the assignments is one great way to address that method, at least. It may not help in the formatting of reporting out, but it at least helps you get to the heart of the issue.
Right. And then you can tag those assignments as sort of standards-based in your mind when you move them over
Sure.
to your grading system that you have.
If I can chime in for
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
second, maybe I should make a request to Google because I'm finding I don't use Gradebook and I have a large number of students. I'm developing new curriculum all the time. And I've found that with our shortened times, I'm kind of eliminating the assessment, just putting the unit goals and going back to the old system of exceeds, meets,
Yeah.
kind of the piles. But my students get confused because if I put 100 points, I'm not giving them
Right.
points, or ungraded is the other option. And I think particularly in the arts, that's
Right.
misleading. But again, if I had my act together to post the actual assessment, that would be better. But the reality is we don't have time for it. So
And now I'm thinking about this, when I show you the rubric, you can do an assignment that's worth 4 points. And you can have exceeds, meets, partially meets, does not meet. And that may be what you're thinking about. And then it would be a 4-point grade, basically. And
that was a thought that I had as I went in and was trying to poke around with it. So that
I'll show you that in just a minute.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
That may answer your question. All right. Anything else while I'm stopped? Anyone? Okay, so let me go on to that. I'm going to show you how I set up my classroom and how I share work with students. And one of the things I do is a slideshow every week. Just because I was finding that let me pull this up. In my regular classes, what was happening is, sorry, I want to get back to where I was. What was happening is, like under week 1, they would have like a bunch of assignments and materials, and there was no organization to it. Like I'd post a video and it would get dropped down to the bottom, and kids were having a hard time like finding when I had instruction and then I had an assignment right below it. It was getting lost in the shuffle and it was driving us all kind of crazy. And so what I came up with, and this again works for me, is I do a slideshow every week for my students. Now I'm going to show you a slideshow where I just have grabbed a bunch of slides, assignments. I would not do a unit like this. I'm going to preface that this is not like my typical week worth of classwork because there's no rhyme or reason to it. I just have grabbed some just different activities that are pretty interactive that I wanted to share with you that I did with my students so I can show you how I would grade them. on the rubric system, and how I set everything up. So these are just, as I said, this is not a typical week for me. But I start off with music class work, week 1, I give the dates. And then I usually do a quote of the week. I'm an artist also, so they always want to know what I'm painting. So a lot of times I'll do a picture that I've done in my studio. And then I've got a direction on how to work with my slideshow. I have them turn these in on Friday of every week, and they basically work down through the work as I give it to them. So I give them all, as I said, I give them all the work because I have kids on so many different learning paths this year that this works for us, this works for me, and they know that they may not have had a lesson. So if they get to something and it doesn't make sense, they know to stop and wait till they've had the lesson in class. So I do, you know how we're supposed to write the I can statements on the board? Don't have a board this year for some of them. So I put it right in the beginning of the slideshow. And that way I know it's not day by day. Like I prefer to put my I can statements on by the day, but it will cover the whole week. And then the next thing I do is I have my learning task for the week here. And then I have them linked. So if they click on this, they can go right to the link in the slideshow and it will take them right down to that activity. So they can see, you know, activity 1 is this, activity 2 is this, activity 3 is this. And I always do an exit ticket so I can get feedback from them. So my first activity, I always do a listening journal with my students. I like to expose them to new music every week. It's something consistent. If I have a student that's struggling, they always can do this activity. Sometimes I will post like a YouTube video of something that I want them to listen to. You can attach music if you want to. I generally don't because of copyright. They can download that music and I don't want to get in trouble that way. So they can either choose their music or you can embed it. If you embed a YouTube music video, you're not going to get in copyright problems because it's out there on YouTube. So I usually do that. I'll embed it right here, but I have right here before we go into that. This is a video of me teaching how to do this activity. So if I were to press play with one of my students, it's going to be slow. It's going to be kind of laggy, but you can see me teaching how to do this activity. I won't bore you with that. But that way, if the kids say, I don't know how to do this, the lesson is right there, right before they do it. Okay. And then this activity, I have a vocab list right here. So if they don't remember like what beat is, they can click on this vocab list. It's linked. So as they're listening to their song, I keep the first part pretty simple. They have to tell me about the beat, the rhythm, and then they highlight or they change the color. The kids get all crazy with this. They like to decorate this sheet. They, you know, sometimes we'll change the color. Sometimes they'll delete all the other words except for the one that they want to use. I let them sort of personalize it. And then as we go on, oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. They have to do a short answer paragraph reflecting on the piece. So I found that this was one thing that I could teach them from day one how to do. They're having a musical experience. They're reflecting on it. I can grade it. We can talk about it. And they know that they're going to have this every week. This has helped a lot because when I'm having those days where I'm teaching in person and remote at the same time, I can always say to my in-person kids, you guys go do the listening journal while I teach on whatever. And so my in-person kids always have something to do. And that same thing goes for the remote kids. The remote kids, I don't know what to do today. Well, you know how to do your listening journal, so you can always start with that. For me, teaching journal music this year, one thing that I've missed is making music with my kids. It's been one of the most challenging things about this year. So at least if I have an activity where they're experiencing music and they all have the same consistent activity, it has helped me just know that they're getting something of purpose. And then one of the other things you can do obviously is embed a video, and they have questions to do with this. And then this is just the State of Maine song. Again, I'm just throwing this in here just so you can see some type of interaction. I've got a video of the song here. I always post a link, just a hint. Sometimes with different systems in different schools, you'll find that links are blocked. Like a lot of times you can't get on a link with Chrome, but you can get on it with Safari. So I'll always post a link there. And then the kids had to pull in pictures about the state of Maine so they could visualize the piece. And then I gave them a writing prompt. So that may be like a week's worth of work for my general music class. So I want to show you the rubric that I would do for that. And
Hey, Judy.
that can help you. Yes.
Judy, before you do that, can you just show people, it's really easy to duplicate this from week to week if you want to maintain the formatting. So can you just show everybody how to do that? Because, you know, this is a really fantastic way, like I put in the chat, this is a great way to present every student with a graphic organizer. And Judy's asking her students to be interactive with it, which is really fantastic. But it also gives you lots of opportunity to differentiate how you're presenting information and how you're asking students to interact with the information. And so if you want to adapt this and use this and start switching over some of your approach to this, it's really easy to duplicate this from week to week, and then you maintain the format, and then you can change the guts that are inside.
I absolutely do that from week to week. Let me share.
Oh, it's so much easier than reinventing the wheel. I mean,
I'm going to go to my drive.
Having to do all the slide layout. I mean, that's where people get overwhelmed, and it's it's learning these little shortcuts and these little tricks of how to duplicate things. I'm going
to go to my drive and show you what I do.
Awesome.
So in my drive, I actually have, my drive is messy. I'll be honest, I know how to organize a drive, but right now it is not organized. But I have slow coming up. I have a folder for my weekly slide decks.
Judy, I'm just impressed that you only have 4 tabs open right now. I bet if we all did a tabs contest, I'm not sure who would win. I think I've got about 20 going right now, but I'm sure
this is for this presentation, but I've got my 6th grade slideshows, 7th grade slideshows, and 8th grade slideshows. And then in this, like I have some MP3s and things like that I've thrown in. But so this is all my 6th grade slide. And this started out with week 1 right here. This was their week 1 slideshow. And then what I just simply did is I copied it for week 2 and changed it, changed the titling, changed everything. So the way you do that is if you go back to here, on a Mac, it is Control-click. On a PC, it's your right click. Okay, and then what I do is I just go down and I make a copy. And then it will make a copy, and it'll say copy of, right there, the slideshow. First thing I do is I rename it to the next week, so I don't mix up what I've done. And I was starting to do it, I had it for my 2 different classes because their learning paths were so different that I would have a slideshow for each class that I could grab. I've stopped doing that, as you can see. I just have 1 per week, and then I adapt it to each class before I share it. Again, find things that work for you as you go along. So then you rename it right here. And then, like, this is copy of grade 6 week 1. I'm just going to say leveraging Google tools, which is the GSuite tools. And then when I go to pull the slideshow, when I make the assignment, I know to look for that one. So then what I do is I simply will go in here and I'll say, okay, I want to change this title page. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, this is now going to be for grade 7. As soon as it comes up, it's slow. And then I can take out the slides I want. I can import new slides. So I'm going to change this to grade 7. And this is going to be week 2. I can change the dates. I can change, like this is, I used a quote of the week here. But then if I want to also import slides from someplace else, I can just do insert, import slides. And I can go to a different presentation and just grab slides from that. So say I like the activity I did with my 6th grade last week and I want my 7th graders to do it this week. I can go to last week's 6th grade slideshow, if that makes sense. Grab those and pull them over. Okay, so it's really, really slow. Oh, I don't know why that's doing that. Probably because it's lagging right now because I'm sharing so much. So anyway, that's the easiest way to do it is you can actually import slides from previous slideshows if you can find them in your Google Drive. One thing you do need to know though is when you are setting up your Google Classroom, when you go to create this assignment, you need to make sure that you make a copy for each student. That way they will edit it, and when they turn it into you, you have a copy of their work. You don't want to simply share it because then they can't edit it, and you don't want them to be able to edit your original. Okay, so when you go to Classwork, again, everything is so slow, I'm sorry guys. There we go. And you create an assignment. And again, I could actually even duplicate one from last week if I wanted to. But when you add the slideshow, it's super important that you, I'm just going to show you the setting. Okay. So when I add the slideshow right here, you want to right here, make sure that you go to make a copy for each student. That's super important. And that way they can edit it, they can get it back to you, and you can get it to, you can get their work. You only see their work. They're not editing your original slideshow. They can either, if they view the file, I think we probably all run into this when they view the file, they all like, hey, wait a second, we can't change anything. Do you want us to make a copy? I hate when that happens. I'll take the whole assignment down and redo it and make a copy for each student, because they will forget to attach. They won't attach it right. They won't make a copy right. If you make a copy for each student, it works so much better.
That excites me to see that I won't have to actually quote unquote make the copy. I just click the button.
Yeah, it does it for you. Easy.
Yep.
It's simple.
And
All right.
another cool thing, while Judy's switching gears here a little bit more, talking about, and this is speaking to Nancy's question in the chat about sharing a copy of one of your slideshows, Judy. You know, this is a theme I think that I've tried to have all year, is that the way that we're all going to get through pandemic teaching and learning is through collaboration and support of one another. So if you create a slideshow and something works really well for your students, you can send that out to colleagues, and using that import slides feature, you can take and move and switch around and use, even if it's individual activities. That's a great way to encourage collaboration between your colleagues and among your colleagues. So just a cool.
And just this is a really cool trick. So if you do have a slideshow, you have to make sure that you can share outside of your district. Okay, your district may have this locked down, so you can't share outside. So you can copy this to like your own personal Gmail if you want. But if you just check, see right up here in the URL, if you just change, I can get over to it. I can't get to it, but the last 4 words right now are edit. If you take that off and you change it to copy, and then you copy and paste that URL to somebody else, they will then be forced to make a copy of your slideshow. So they can't edit your slideshow. They're getting a copy of it. Oh, right here. Okay, there's the edit right there. You see it says edit. Right now, it's not editing the whole slideshow. It wants me to edit just this slide. But do you see where it says edit right there? On the basic, let's see if I can go back to, if you go to Drive, on your basic URL for that slideshow, instead of edit, change that to copy. Give that to your friend, it forces a copy. And if anyone wants a copy of any of these slideshows for my setup, I don't know how, Jason, if you have emails, I can.
Yeah, I have everyone's email who registered for it, so I can send that out. Yep, absolutely.
So I can just show you, I can send you a copy of one of my generic slideshows, and then you can change it for yourself. Okay. And
one thing that I had set up last spring, that if people want to bring it back, I had set up a Google Classroom through my own account at the state, and had a bunch of people that were able to share resources and whatever. So if we want to have a Google Classroom for sharing Google Classroom stuff, I'm happy to help facilitate that. If we think that that would be of benefit to people, you know, send me an email and give me some feedback on that. And I'm happy to set that up and have that be a space where you can share, like, you know, share slides, share tips, share things that you found, that you've gathered, if that's helpful.
So the last thing I'm going to do today, I'm just going to touch on this. I think I'm probably going to spend more time on this one in a future session, is how to do the rubric, because we're running out of time now, and this is such an important feature. So what I want to do is just show you how to get to it so you can start playing with it, and then maybe we can come back and you can ask questions. So if you go to the assignment that you've just assigned, and you click on the little 3 buttons, I call them the snowman when I'm with the kids, because it looks like a snowman to me. I call the other little thing a waffle, and this is the snowman. if you edit it. And you see rubric down here. I've already created a rubric, but usually I'll delete that. And I'll start again. It will go up to create a rubric. You can reuse a rubric. So I don't have any right now in this classroom, but if you've used one for a previous week, you can just reuse that one and change your point value. So I'm gonna go to, I think this is what you were talking about, Linda. When you wanna do standards based, if you have an activity in it doesn't have to be a slideshow. This works for any assignment that you have in Google. I use this by activity in my slideshows, but you can use it for anything. So what you can do is you can set up a rubric this way. I do it by activity and the kids get so many points for my slideshow. But again, you can use this if you are doing like when I did songwriting with the kids, I set up a rubric where they got so many points for a strong melody. They got so many points for, you know, using lyrics properly. They had so many points for whatever we were working on. And then I did it with the 4-point system. They exceeded, they met, they partially met, or they did not meet. But you also can do this, this is the cool thing with, as I said, the slideshow. So if I did my listening journal, that would be the criterion title. And I could say, the description could be accurately completed listening journal. And then again, you can give as many points as you want. You could do 4, 3, 2, 1. I do my listening journals as 20 points. The first one is exceeds standards. RDS, sorry. And then my description is, so for 20 points, in order for the students to get that, I could have something like thoroughly, of course I spelled that wrong. Expressed opinions of the song in the reflection using appropriate grammar, appropriate vocab, whatever you want. Then you can add another one. So they could get 15 points for meeting the standard. And then again, you can put in the description what that looks like to you. And then 10. And then 5. And then I always put a 0 in if they did not attempt. So if they left that activity blank, they get a 0. Okay, so that would be activity 1. Activity 2 is like the John Williams. So I can add another criterion. And I can put John Williams video. There was 9 questions in that, so I'll give it 10 points to make it round. And I'm going to do completed questions. Oh, that's 10. Level title is completed questions. Completed 9 questions. Did half of the questions I'll give them 0, did not attempt. Okay. And then once you do that, you save it right up here. And so now when I'm going to go through this, I can click on the rubric and you can see what it is. And you can go back and you can edit right here if you need to. Okay, or as I'm grading, I'm going to save that and I'm going to take you over to the grading window. So a student now has done this activity. So I click on the activity and I go through to grade it to see what they've done. And the rubric shows up. Sorry, guys. Everything is slow today. All right, so as they're doing that, you can go through, why is my rubric not showing up? I'm worried that I didn't save it. So usually it shows up right off to the side. Oh, right there. There we go. It's loading. All right. So as I go through it, I'm grading theirs. I can either click on exceeds, meets, partially meets, and they'll get those points. Or I can just put in their the points for this one. So like for the listening journal, say I wanted to give them 22 points, you can put that in. Okay. And then I can go down through each one of them, and then it will give you the total that they get. And that's going to be what's going to show up. So again, you can use that for the standards for the 4, 3, 2, 1. If you wanted to do that, if that makes sense.
And if you notice at the bottom, Linda and everybody, you can add a private comment to each student's
Yes.
Work as well. So again, in a standards-based world, if it's more about giving the formative feedback, then you can type to them, and that box will accommodate. I don't think I've ever filled that box entirely. So yeah.
And a lot of times, have you ever got work from students and it's not done? That's where I put that. I return it back to them and say, your work is empty, question mark, question mark. You know, did you forget to attach, or did you forget to do your work, or you know why? And do you know why they do that? Because if their parents are getting notifications, it looks like it's done until you turn it back to them, and then it's still missing.
Judy, that's just crazy. I've never had that happen. In all my years of teaching, I never had a student turn in an empty assignment ever.
It happens all the time.
I know.
All the time. So yeah. And what I do with my students is usually I'll say, forgot to turn in work. This is the second time you've done this. And then I'm like, next time I see empty work, I'm calling home. And that usually takes care of it. Usually I say. So that's how you do the rubric. I think I'm going to spend a lot more time on, I'd like to spend that on that, and forms are the two things, but also I want to hear your feedback. So we've got a few minutes left. And Jason, you've been monitoring the chat. So I put a lot in today because today was meant to be sort of an overview of what you could possibly do. And I really would encourage you to send feedback. So when Jason and I are talking about future sessions, that we can develop those to your needs. So, any questions? Feel free at this point, you can unmute and talk if you want to.
Judy, that's fantastic. I just put in the chat a link, 2 links. One is to the Department of Education's YouTube channel. We have lots of great recorded professional development sessions that are not just arts related or for all content areas, but we have our digital learning specialists have done amazing work this year to provide multi-part series on leveraging all sorts of different digital tools that you have available that I'm sure many of your colleagues are using in other content areas that you're kind of wondering, you know, how could I ever use Nearpod in my classroom? How could I ever use Jamboard or some of these other plugins and programs and options? So they have done a wonderful job of creating these videos. So if you go to that, YouTube channel for the Department of Education, you'll find every bit of professional development that we've been providing ever since before last March is all posted there. So you can poke around for that. And if you're looking for something specific and you're not sure where to find it, send me an email. I put my email and telephone number in the chat earlier. And for those of you that aren't sure how to save the chat so that you can access all of these things later, in the chat box, if you click on the box with the 3 little dots at the bottom, it looks like a snowman laying down. He's a sad snowman. He's napping. He's not standing up. If you click on that, you can click Save Chat, and it will save it as a text file on your computer, so you can go back and access all of these URLs and things later. You'll have to copy and paste them into a browser or something. They're not going to be hot links for you when you access them.
Added my email too.
Oh,
So,
fantastic. Thank you, Judy. That's great. And on that exit ticket that I put in the chat box for everybody is an opportunity for you to give us feedback and some direction for Judy and I as we're putting the next series options together, or sessions, I should say, in this series, we can better dive deeper into what you all are really interested in knowing more about, so that we can spend less time on the things that everybody's got under their belt, and we can dive into some more specific things. Judy?
I feel like I've thrown a lot at you today, so I don't be overwhelmed by it. I just want to give you an overview of this is what some things you can do, but please, 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 take advantage of that exit ticket and give us some feedback, because I really would like to tailor these to your needs to make
Hey,
your life a
Judy,
little bit
can I
easier.
ask you one quick question? Does Google Meets have a way that we can use breakout rooms the way that Zoom does?
Good question.
I put a link in the chat earlier to the help article for Google Meet for breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And it'll walk you right through that. Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate it greatly. The other thing is we use Infinite Campus. So is there a way to export our grades to
Yes.
Campus?
Yes, there is.
Awesome. I'd love to have that.
My husband's, you work for Bangor, right? My
I
husband's
do.
in charge of Infinite Campus, so I am very familiar with how to do that.
Oh,
Does-
awesome. I'd
does
love
grade-
any information there.
Does grade transfer
Yes.
work, Judy?
Oh, yes. Grade
Yeah.
transfer has saved my life.
And
Oh.
Jen, I put in the chat a message. I did a private message to you with a link right to that, but I'll drop that in for everybody as a Google Chrome extension that you can have that will link your classroom to a whole bunch of different student information systems.
Yeah, it used to be
Thank
free, but
you.
now there's a minimal fee for it, but it's well worth whatever the fee is. It has saved my life. My husband discovered it last year talking to another teacher. He's like, hey, babe, why don't you try this? I was like, oh, like, yeah, it was one of those moments. And I showed it to a couple of other teachers at my school, and they were like, oh, wow. So, yeah.
And look, I said it at the onset of this session, and I'll say it again and again and again as we go through this. The myriad challenges that you all are up against in terms of trying to engage with your students and to get them engaged in learning through this portal, through this space, is challenging enough. Anything that we can come up with to help save you time and effort is so remarkable, because it means that you cannot have to worry about focusing on the tech aspect of something. You can work on the substance of what it is that you want to do with your students and how you want to engage with them and how you want them to engage with the material. So that's what this is all about for me. I know that Judy is all about that as well, and that she is a wealth of knowledge for us here in this session, but for her colleagues and others around the state. So reach out to us, use that exit ticket, and let us know what you need extra help with, so that I can, it may be a matter of me reaching out to my digital learning specialist colleagues at the department and having them get in touch with you and doing something for you specifically, or for all of your colleagues. That's what we're here for. We want to be responsive to your needs. So let us know how we can best help.
I was going to mention that too. The digital learning specialists at the Department of Education are incredible. I've worked with them on the Moose project this year, and I literally go with them, and they're like, I'll look at that, and within a day, even they come back to it with an answer.
During this session, I reached out to John and Emma and asked them about a video series for people that are new to Google Classroom, and John got back to me like that. I mean, they are just,
They were incredible.
I don't know when they ever sleep, but they are so remarkably attentive to everything. It really is. It's a pleasure to be able to work with them. In terms of scheduling, everybody, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware. I think, Judy, maybe the best thing to do is just to skip next week.
Okay.
And we'll make session 2 on the 10th, I believe, of February. We were going to have session 2 for this on the 3rd, a week from today. But again, Judy has a scheduling conflict, so we'll just skip next week, and we'll go to the 10th for session 2, same time, same link. I'm just going to change it in the Zoom invite. So you may get actually an email that says that this event has changed. It's just so that we can update that. And then we can figure out, Judy, you and I, when a third session we might be able to fit in after that. But we'll just plan everybody to see you again on February 10th. And this video, once I get it uploaded to the Department of Education's YouTube channel, it will be at that link that I put in the chat. So if you want to go back and watch this again to get to see something a second time, that will be available as well.
Hey, Jason,
Yes, Pat.
when I clicked on the, the save the chat, where did you say that's going to be? Where could we find it?
It's going to be somewhere on your computer. It may be in your downloads folder, or it may pop up on your desktop. But it's going to be it'll be a text file. It'll have a TXT extension.
Okay.
Yeah, mine it's saved in Zoom. Okay, so Zoom makes its own folder.
Yep,
and then
Zoom
each
makes a
one-
folder. Yep, good
Yeah,
point, Judy. Thank you.
for the date. Okay, January 27th. So you should see it there.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, Judy, again for your time. I appreciate it. I hope that this was helpful, everybody. And again, use that exit ticket to give us some feedback. And we'll see everybody back here on February 10th.
Thank you, everyone.